Welcome and welcome back. Day 3 of the leaks. Yes, we finally got the Echo bosses, and oh my god, they told us every single one in a single day. So I am gonna be talking about the Echo bosses, their drops, ranking them, updating my area rankings, all of that, all right now, so strap in, it's probably gonna be a long one. First up in the desert, we have the Calphite Queen. This one, we kind of already knew what it was gonna be. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the idea of an Echo boss, they're essentially just an empowered version of the existing boss. They have the same drop table, but they have a really powerful, equipable unique of some kind. So with the Calphite Queen, we get the Dry Gore Blowpipe, and a lot of comparisons have been made to this being like the ranged version of a Fang because it does 2 accuracy rolls, takes the highest one. So basically, this thing is actually going to be fairly accurate. I can see this melting a lot of bosses. It's going to lose out at sort of like the top end of bosses as they get higher in defense, but it's still going to be a really strong thing, and it kind of helps fill in a gap that the desert has before you get yourself into the raid, getting like the Twisted Bow and the Masoris. Now, the way that you unlock most of the Echo bosses, you're gonna have to kill the regular boss until you get a thing called an Echo Orb, which means you're probably gonna be killing this boss a number of times. We don't quite know the drop rate on these yet, but if you consider that you're killing the boss for the Echo Orb, and then you're also gonna be killing the Echo version for the corresponding Echo drop, I think it's important to look at the drop tables and kind of know some of the stuff that you're gonna be picking up. Obviously, in leagues, you're able to farm any boss that you want, so you can look up different drop tables on any of the bosses in the area and kind of see what's good for them. But I think especially with the Echo bosses, since you're likely going to be spending a lot of time with them, it can really help to kind of see what you're going to get out of the ordeal. Now, Calphite Queen does drop some potions, so you get like super attacks, the ranging potions, brews, super restores. It doesn't drop a lot of those, but it will help, and especially if you don't have access to making super combats or ranging potions, this can be really helpful for that. Calphite Queen also has kind of a slew of random supplies for you, so tiny amounts of Ruinite bars, get quite a decent amount of gold or magic logs, uncut gems for crafting, as well as some stacks of grimy herbs. Plus, Calphite Queen is traditionally really good for getting herb lore secondaries, that being the wines of Zamorak as well as the cactus potatoes. Plus, you've got all of the rare drops that you're already going to be probably hunting for tasks. And there is also a pet. Pet rates are not increased in the league, but hey, I mean, you're killing the Calphite Queen, so maybe. Now, there's not a whole lot to say about this. There's no special attack. It's just a really strong blowpipe. It is going to slot in really nicely in the desert as you're like trying to work your way towards Masoris, but it's kind of plain. And because of that, I'm going to stick it in the B tier for now. It may move. I want to be conservative. I think there's a lot more interesting rewards around, and not that any of these aren't going to be powerful. So bear that in mind. I mean, anything that ends up on the board, any of the Echo drops, they're going to be really strong, and there's definitely ways to build around all of them. But I just don't find the Calphite Queen thing that interesting. Next up, we have Mauritania, which is going to be a empowered version of the Grotesque Guardians. The boss I forgot on my area review, rip. No chance of me guessing that Echo. Now, you do need 75 Slayer in order to unlock this, and you're gonna have to get a task for Gargoyles or the Grotesque Guardians. Once you get the Echo Orb, you're able to just do the boss fight. You don't need a task anymore. And what this is gonna drop are essentially empowered Barrows gloves. Empowered because the stats are equivalent to Barrows gloves, and also because they're gonna give you the Barrows amulet set effect on the Barrows armor and double it. Golly, that's a mouthful, isn't it? Now, the Guardians themselves, as a boss to farm, they're actually low-key kind of like good for smithing. So if you weren't going to take the mining relic and you happen to have Mauritania, it's actually not a bad trade-off here because the Grotesque Guardians drop a lot of bars plus a lot of ores. Ores are a little annoying to deal with in the league, but bars especially, I mean, that's just straight smithing XP. It does have some range of potions, so, you know, super attack, ranging potion, brews. It's got its own set of rare items that are probably going to be tasks. You can also look forward to Granite Dust. Not like the biggest deal, but if you happen to have a cannon, if you take Asgardia, you can upgrade your cannonballs and just get a little bit more out of them. And there's a pet. I think all of the bosses have a pet, so I guess you can look forward to that. Now, in terms of where this has a lot of strength, obviously it's with the Barrows armor. That is what it's intended for. And because it also combines the Barrows amulet effect into the gloves, you can wear whatever necklace that you want, which just means you get another slot for some more power available to you. Now, each of the set effects are a little bit different. So with Darox, you hit harder when you're low HP. So with this, you're just gonna hit even harder when you're low HP. And the kind of like additional effect is in the chance to recoil damage that you take. So there may be some fun builds with Darok in terms of just like returning damage back to stuff, especially on something like the Echo bosses, which are gonna be empowered and probably gonna hit pretty hard. You got Barrows, which gives you just a lot of prayer bonus, hits through defenses. So again, on tankier enemies, you don't even have to worry about accuracy just about, because it gives you a 50% chance to hit through that defense. And then, you know, again, the prayer bonus. So your prayers are really going to be up there. Guthan's is just going to be like tons and tons of healing, really. Carol's is the blowpipe of the swamp. So you have that chance to double hit. And then Aram's, I think, out of all of these is going to be particularly strong because what you're going to get from the gloves, you're gonna have a 50% chance to do 60% more damage. And I'm definitely not the biggest math guy, but I think that means you're gonna be hitting quite a lot for any spells that you use while you are using Arams. And this is especially exciting for people who want to take the desert and Mauritania, because barrages will hit for essentially like 45, you know, somewhere around that range. So it's really going to get up there. And that's not even including if you add in some sort of really powerful necklace, really powerful ring. If people know the Echo bosses, they probably know what I'm referencing. So like, there's definitely a lot of potential here for that. And you may notice that there is one that's missing. Torag's kind of like the forgotten brother, you know. It's interesting. You get more defense the more health that you're missing. It's 2% defense per 1 health that you're missing. So, you know, you can essentially get like 200% defense, and that would make it better than Justiciar in terms of flat stats, but I don't know if that'll be useful for anything. That we'll probably just have to see, depending on what the combat masteries and some of the relics look like. Now, one downside of Barrows is the fact that you have to keep the whole set on in order to get the effect from these gloves. These gloves really aren't good as like a standalone item. You can't really pair this with other regions. It locks in a lot of your slots. And especially for all of the melee brothers, they're all two-handed weapons. The only one-hand weapon actually is Aram. So, I mean, you get a little bit of options for, you know, you can pick up like a shield and help bolster your damage with that. But the rest of these, you're really locked into these 4 gear slots. And that means you can't do something like a fun door build with Torags when your defense is like all the way up, which is a little unfortunate, I think. And it also means you can't take advantage of at least some of the other Echo drops. There are some weapons in the mix, so you can't get like Barrows armor benefits plus use these other weapons. So that hurts it a little bit for me. I don't love that it's kind of inflexible, but I do really enjoy Barrows. So for now, I'm going to put it at B tier. Again, I'm being a little bit conservative because there are a lot of other drops to look at. It might move. We'll see. Next, we are moving into the wilderness. And what we got here is an empowered version of the King Black Dragon. Plus, you're getting 2 unique items with this, which really just isn't fair. You know, like a lot of the other places, they only get 1. So the regions that get 2, it feels just that much more powerful. Now, as you're killing the King Black Dragon, it doesn't really have a lot of like super interesting drops. Yeah, you might get a lot of U-logs, so like rip the people who took the woodcutting relic and they're fletching that way. You just get free fletching this way. You know, and then I guess there's like a big stack of gold, or if you have something like the Fremnik region and you want to use Blast Furnace. So it's not the best boss to farm, but the weapon and the shield itself are going to be so strong. And I put these up here as just a reference, like the shield is better than any of the defenders. The sword is better than a blade of Salador just by comparison. So this is literally like best in slot single hand slash weapon. One of the nice things about this is it does full damage to the corporeal beast. So you don't have to worry about trying to like slot in Asgarnia into your build to get like the Zamorak pasta. If you wanted to get the Zamorak spear, if you wanted to like take down the corp relatively quickly. So you're not going to have to worry about that at all. Now, I do have a few gripes with this. I'm a little bit disappointed that it's the King Black Dragon, so you're not going to be able to take advantage of the Revenant weapons to kill him. I mean, I guess you could, but you're not going to get the Wilderness bonus, so it kind of takes away from that piece. That and the fact that there's a really strong melee weapon here now, you're going to get a little less use out of the Ursine Chain Mace, which isn't necessarily a problem. I mean, all of these things have tasks associated to them, but it just feels a little bit worse, you know? And it's kind of the same deal with some of the corporeal beast shields. Like, this shield is just so good. I mean, stat-wise, it almost completely beats out all of the spirit shields. Now, the spirit shields do have some additional benefits to it, like reducing the damage taken or prayer drain effects. But the thing is, this shield stops like everything, like all kinds of status effects. So I'm a big fan of the different spirit shields. I've always loved them for a long time, so that hurts me a little bit personally. I don't think it's that big of a deal in terms of like what's in the wilderness, but that's just a little bit of a tier. But I mean, man, this thing, I just look at all the status effects that this thing is going to protect you from. Poison, venom, dragon fire, ice breath, swamp decay, disease, desert heat, ice prison, brimstone, dungeon floor, sulfur, clouds, cold, ice, stat drain. Like, you basically block everything. Now, because these two are just so strong, I think this is going to be one of the best Echo bosses and best Echo items in the entire league. And because of that, I am going to put it up in S tier. I don't think there's much else to say about that. I mean, it's just so good. Speaking of so good, welcome to the Fremnik area. Traditionally trashed on. I've trashed on it too, all right? I'm guilty of that as well. You get an empowered version of the Dagannoth Kings. Now, I do think in terms of Echo bosses, these are likely going to be pretty challenging just because you have essentially 3 separate bosses. They're all going to be attacking you with different styles, and who knows what other kind of special mechanics they're going to run. But oh boy, are you rewarded. Look at the stats on the necklace and the ring. You get 2 pieces of jewelry in slots that are generally kind of hard to fill during leagues. I mean, you had to take Fremnik anyway if you wanted to get any sort of good ring put together. And these are just perfect tribrid jewelry that literally just beats out best in slot for everything else. Now, in terms of the drops, there's not really anything good as you're farming them. Yeah, you'll have the uniques and the pets, plus the bones, dragon axe. So I mean, like, there's stuff here for you that's mostly just to get league tasks. There's not a lot in the way of like supplies or anything that you're looking forward to. But again, these 2 items together, best in slot, it is so difficult to like get a good build together. I mean, these 2 necklaces come from Kandarin. You need Kandarin in order to pick this one up, and not everybody wants to go Kandarin. So this necklace immediately saves you from that pain. And you already had to pick up Fremnik to make all of the good rings. I mean, the Ring of Suffering coming from Kandarin and the Ring of the Gods coming from the Wilderness. So like, yeah, you could pick up those 2, but they didn't give you a lot in the way of offensive stats. So this ring, this necklace together, it's going to be really powerful. And especially because you don't generally fill those slots with anything else. So you're not like having to compete against other items. These are just direct upgrades. They're just good. Anybody can use them. So all of you Fremnik enjoyers, you win. S tier for the Fremnik Echo, because it is just, the stats are so good and it's so easy to slot in to any sort of build. Like, you're really not having to worry about any other competing slots aside from maybe like Ring of Suffering if you wanted to do a recoil build with Darox. Like, that's pretty much it. So I'm really expecting a lot of people to go Fremnik now. Granted, gear is not everything in leagues, but gear is pretty important in leagues, so I'm thinking Fremnik's really up there. Moving swiftly along, we are now going to Asgarnia, which gets an empowered version of Cerberus. And I didn't say this with the Grotesque Guardians, but I'm really surprised that they went with Slayer bosses. Now, I don't think that you're gonna be fighting Echo bosses early. They're meant to be tough, but having that Slayer requirement, I didn't think they'd do it. So hands up, shame on me. I didn't know. Terrible at guessing. So you're gonna need 91 Slayer, kind of similar to the Grotesque Guardians, because you have to get a Cerberus task. You have to farm him in order to get the Echo orb, so that way you can fight the Echo version of him. Once you have it unlocked, you don't need to worry about the Slayer task. And what you'll be rewarded with is the Dog Sword, which is hilarious. It is a combination of all of the God Swords put together for their special attack. So the stats aren't anything like crazy, but you're definitely doing this for the special attack. Now, the boss himself, as you're farming him, again, not like a ton of supply drops. Cerberus is much better in terms of like generating GP, so a lot of alchables coming your way. Probably weakens the case for the Golden God Relic if you're going to be farming here a lot. Granted, you're going to be farming this pretty late into the league, at least, late for the league, which is like day 3. But, it's like you're going to generate so much cash from killing this guy, both to get the Echo orb and to get the Echo drop. So something to kind of keep in mind with that. The other supply drops, they're all right. He has some different things that they will stack up over time, but it's nothing too crazy. Obviously, you want the different crystals for the best in slot boots. You got puppers here as your pet, so there are some other reasons that you're going to be farming him out. And depending on how difficult the Echo boss can be, that can be a little bit of a benefit since you're not having to worry about a Slayer task. Now, again with this, since it's a combination combination of all of the Godsword specials, there are likely going to be some interesting things that you can do. The Zamorak one, you can freeze bosses. I don't know how useful that's going to be. It very much depends on the boss, and it also very much depends on the combat style that you're trying to lean into. Extra healing, extra damage, I mean, both of these, between like the Saradomin Godsword and the Zaros Godsword, that's just going to be generally useful. But I think the most powerful specials for this blade would be the Armadil Godsword, which is increased damage and increased accuracy, plus the Bandos Godsword special, which is just reducing stats. So those two things together synergize extremely well. You do more damage, you hit more often, and you lower stats when you're doing it. Now, the problem with this weapon is it's reliant on special attack. So I can't rank it really highly right now. Obviously, if we get a special attack relic, this thing becomes way better. But for what we have available to us, I'm just putting it in B tier because the stats themselves aren't anything crazy. It's literally just the special attack. And while the special attack is good, 50% special is a lot if you don't have a way to regen that. So Desert Enjoyers, if you happen to go Asgarnia, which you're probably going to anyway to upgrade Masori and get some other range options for yourself, then the Lightbearer is going to work extremely well with this thing. And this has also made me rethink. I think I'm going to put Moritania into the A tier. I don't know. It's complicated, all right? Moritania locks up so many gear slots that I'm a little bit like conflicted on it, but there's definitely some cool builds, and I do love Barrows, so it gets to live in A tier, at least for now. But we have got Kandarin, and again, on the Slayer theme, we've got the empowered version of the Thermonuclear Smoke Devil. He rewards you with essentially a mage shield, the devil's element. What it does is it is treated like unlimited elemental ruins, and it will double the weaknesses for NPCs. We'll circle back to that. I've got some numbers I can share with you to make it a little easier to visualize. But just off rip, it's really similar to like the elemental tomes. It's just like if you combine them all together. Now you are going to need 93 Slayer in order to fight the boss, because again, it's that same pattern. You've got to kill the normal boss, get the Echo Orb, and then that unlocks the Echo version of it. Then you don't need a Slayer task anymore, so you're just able to farm it over and over. The drops on Thermonuclear Smoke boss, again, aren't anything too crazy, but there are like pretty decent stacks of supplies. So if you end up spending a decent amount of time here, you will start to build some of these things up. It's got the Occult Necklace, which not looking so hot because Fremdic's in the mix. I'll circle back to that. I've definitely got some gripes with this one. But then you also have the Smoke Staff, which is going to empower your standard spellbook spells, your elemental spells. So the Smoke Staff plus the shield that you're getting from the Echo Boss are going to work super well together. Now, this is a lot of numbers. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here, but I wanted to give you like a visual representation of all of the bosses and all of their weaknesses, because I think it's going to be kind of difficult to use the item from this region. And you can see Asgarnia has like a big concentration of elemental weaknesses, not necessarily that strong, Mauritania being the second best, but even still, the one thing that I wonder is how good of a combination is Kandarin with these other areas, because great that you get the elemental weakness thing available to you, but in leagues you are limited to 3 region choices, and there's not that many bosses with weaknesses, and you're also trying to compete with like what regions you want to choose for other types of gear or other activities. So I think it's going to be really challenging to get a lot of use out of it. The bosses that do have weaknesses that you do pick up, it's going to be really fun. And of course, there's also all of the normal mobs in the game that happen to have weaknesses too. I didn't want to put those up there. There's already a lot of numbers. Already makes my head hurt, but I don't know, man. And the other big gripe that I have with this one is if you don't go Fremdic, you are locked to Fire Wave. And while the 4 damage difference between that isn't like the biggest deal, it matters when you're talking about percentages on top of percentages, which is generally how magic works. So like you'll want your base number to be higher because that's what's going to work with all of the different multipliers. And because of that, you almost have to take Fremdic in order for this to work for Kandarin, unless they give you the Mythskilled or the Wrath Altar in Kandarin without the need for Fremdic. I hope that's the case, because that'll open you up to a lot of other combinations, and you could potentially pick up more bosses that you can have fun with, but we'll have to see on that. Now, the other kind of weird thing by taking Fremdic is you're gonna get that best in slot jewelry, which is gonna like override the occult necklace and some of the Zenites that you'd pick up in Kandarin. Not necessarily like the biggest deal, but just kind of feels a little bad if you ask me. But I guess that's just kind of the nature of it. I mean, there's no way to get around that. The Dagannoth jewelry is just so strong. So because of my gripes with this, because of the complications with trying to find things that are actually weak to elemental spells, for now, I'm putting Kandarin down really low. It is getting D tier for this item. There are definitely builds that can take advantage of this. I think if you went like Kandarin, Fremnik, Moritania, you'll have some interesting options where you can play around with like Arims. And Moritania does have at least a few bosses that are going to be weak to the elemental spells, particularly like Araxor is going to be pretty fun. The Nightmare has this little, like, one of the phases in Nightmare, you can kind of use it, but you can't use it on the Nightmare itself, so it's a little bit weak. Barrows are kind of a weak boss, so I don't know how much I really love that, but you could try it. I mean, really, you're trying it for Araxor at that point, but I digress. D tier Kandarin item. I'm sorry, I just think it's too complicated to use. I think the fact that we're in leagues and you have to pick certain areas, like, it's really difficult to plan around. I don't think it's going to be good in general, but there are probably going to be some fun builds that come out of that. Moving on to Taronwyn. Now, the Echo boss they went with is the Corrupted Gauntlet, which, again, kind of surprising, but there's not a lot of bosses to choose from in Taronwyn. Rip my dream of an Echo Rabbit. What can you do? Now, you do only get the Echo Orb drop from the Corrupted Gauntlet, so you can't do it just in the normal one. You're gonna have to do the beefed up version of it in order to get that. Once you've unlocked it, you're able to just immediately fight the enhanced Hunllef, so you don't have to go through the preparation stage. Depending on how difficult the empowered version of this boss is, it may actually make farming the gauntlet faster, which that would be pretty cool because you're still gonna have to farm the gauntlet a lot in order to get crystal armor, get the Bofa, get the Blade of Salador, you know, all the stuff that you would typically get out of that. But what you're rewarded with for beating the empowered Hunllef is the Crystal Blessing. Takes up the arrow slot, which is great because the Bofa doesn't use ammo. It does give you a prayer bonus, but the main thing that you're getting with this is the crystal armor's accuracy and damage bonus are going to apply to melee weapons that you use, which is almost exactly what I guessed, so good job, me. Threw out enough guesses, I surely had to get one of them right. Now, I am a little confused why they didn't just let this work with magic, because that would have really helped Taronwyn. Like, I mean, great that it works for ranged and melee, but like, Taronwyn's already lacking magic, so kinda sucks. Guess you're out of luck on that one, but you know, either way, I guess you can fill magic slots elsewhere and just not worry about it. Just seems like a little bit of an odd choice. But since you're going to be farming the gauntlet so much, what you can look forward to is mostly a lot of alchables. Also drops a lot of uncut gems, so really good for crafting. That's about it. There's some other things that come in sparingly, but nothing that's too crazy. Plus the pet, always a pet. Now, something that I find interesting about this power, it doesn't say that you have to have the full crystal set. So you may be able to do something fun like keeping the chest and the leg piece and then going Moritania and getting the black mask and being able to just absolutely obliterate Slayer related monsters. And especially since there are quite a few Slayer related Echo bosses that could be really, really powerful. Now the drawback to this, and the thing that continues to be a little bit of a struggle for Taronwyn, is you still have to wear the crystal armor. So you're not going to be able to get strength bonus out of other gear. It's not going to be quite as good. So you're losing value on things like some of the Asgarnia sets, or even in Moritania with like the Inquisitor set. So that's a little bit of a bummer. It still makes Taronwyn kind of a weird one to like combine with other regions, just because of the fact that you can't use like those 3 main gear slots. But I also don't think that's the biggest deal, since you are getting a lot of damage and accuracy out of the set anyway. So with this, I do think it solves a lot of problems for Taronwyn, and I think it's going to open up some really interesting melee builds specifically. And I'm thinking like Taronwyn with the Wilderness, that could be pretty strong. I mean, frankly, you just take these 3 right here, you're probably good. Dang it, Fremnik, the jewelry, man. The jewelry is so good, dude. Taronwyn, Fremnik, Wilderness. I think that's going to be a really cool build, but I'm not here talking about combos today. That'll have to be a separate video because, boy, there can be a lot of stuff. So Taronwyn, welcome to A tier. Joining Moritania, I think it's going to be really interesting, and it does do some good stuff for this region. Next, we have got the Great Korend, and what an interesting choice for an Echo boss, an empowered Hespori. Now, this one is a little bit weird in terms of trying to get access to it because you're gonna have to beat Hespori the first time. You only have to beat it once. You are guaranteed the Echo Orb, so you'll be able to fight the Echo version of it. Once you've gotten that, you don't have to worry about like planting an Echo Seed or anything like that. You're able to fight the Echo Boss as much as you want. But at least for the first instance, depending on how lucky you get with the seeds, because you're still gonna have to get a Hespori seed, it's gonna take 22 to 32 hours to grow, unless there's like a farming relic or something. There's a little bit of a time gate with unlocking this boss if you take this region, so just bear that in mind. You're not gonna be able to fight this Echo Boss on the first day. You also need 65 farming. Not really a problem from Kurend, because there's just so many ways to train up your farming. And what you're rewarded with is essentially a Salamander. I'll circle back and I'll talk about it in a little bit, but in general, there's kind of good all-around stats, and it is charged with nature and earth runes, so don't have to worry about any sort of like fancy tar. Now, the boss itself drops an absolute ton of seeds. I only put the special seeds up here, but I mean, just bear that in mind. I mean, herb seeds, tree seeds, all kinds of flower seeds, what have you. It's just all kinds of different stuff, which is going to be really helpful for farming, really helpful for farming contracts. I don't think Kurend struggles that much with farming because you also have like Tithe Farm, but you're also probably going to pick up some points fighting this boss, getting the compost bucket if there's a task associated to that. There's a pet, and also something that's interesting is normally when you kill Hespori, you get farming XP. So if this works like the normal Hespori, you're going to be getting a ton of farming XP once you unlock this. And I mean, this is before the League's rate or any sort of multiplier. So like, if you're able to kill Hespori super fast, you're probably going to be getting like tens of millions of XP per hour, which would actually be insane. I don't know if they're going to do that, but it'd be cool to see. Again, I don't think it's that big of a deal since Kurend already has a lot of ways to train farming, but I mean, this would be just absolutely absurd. But the weapon itself, they have made Salamanders great again, and I am here for it. One of the interesting things with this is it actually has a range of 7. So normally Salamanders, you have to stand in melee range regardless of what style that you use. But with this, you can camp out, you know, far away from whatever it is that you're shooting at. And especially for melee, that's going to be really interesting. I wonder if there'll be some cool interactions you can do. I know some people speculated like melee Zora potentially, but I'm sure there's a lot of bosses. So this is just kind of like a fun one to play around with. Now, because it's a Salamander, it's not going to be like best in slot for any particular style. Yeah, you're going to have things that'll outclass you, but the fact that it's tribrid, it just sorts your weapon whenever you get it, and the stats are still really strong. So I think this is going to be like a really nice mid-game weapon, especially because, you know, you take Kurend, you're going to be going into the raids anyway. This can be a really good raiding weapon. You don't have to worry about switching a bunch of gear around. You just change the style for your attack and you're good to go. Now, because of the flexibility of this and the fact that I love Salamanders probably influencing me a little bit, I'm putting it in A tier, top of A tier. I don't think it's quite S just because it's not going to have that much damage compared to some of the other things out there, but I think it's still going to be really good. And if nothing else, I think it's going to be really fun, particularly for melee builds, because now you get like crazy long range for a melee build, but also because it just kind of helps you fill those slots, kind of ease you into the rest of the late game. This is going to probably be your go-to weapon if you have Kurend for all of your early bossing. So last but certainly not least, we've got Soul Heredit. I cannot believe they made this guy the Echo Boss from Varlamore. That is nuts, dude. This thing is already really hard. I have never beat the Coliseum, so while there's not technically a requirement, good luck, all right? You have to beat the Coliseum once. I guess that is kind of a requirement. Once you beat it, you're guaranteed the Echo Orb, and then once you use it, you're able to fight Echo Soul Heredit immediately. You don't have to go through like Echo Waves or anything like that. One downside of this, there isn't so much of a drop table that you're going to worry about. He will drop the quiver every time that you fight him, but you're not going to get the other loot. So not the best, but it is going to be a crazy good challenge. I think a lot of people are going to have some fun with this, and you're going to be picking up 2 items. You got the Sunlight Spear and the Sunlit Bracers. The Bracers, pretty good stats all around, not necessarily best in slot when compared to something like the Empowered Barrow gloves that we're going to get, but this is still a really good melee glove option, really good ranged glove option as well. Plus it has the benefit of increasing healing effects. And then the Sunlight Spear, 2-handed weapon. It's going to take over your weapon and your shield slot. So is it 2-handed? I don't know. I mean, I guess you can't switch shields out with it, so you have to use this one. But it has got a special attack that is going to deal more damage based off of your prayer bonus. So there might be some interesting things with this, and especially with the Sunlit Bracers, that healing, the 100% healing is really, really cool. The downside with both of these things, though, is it's behind like the hardest boss in the game that also happens to be empowered. So like, are you gonna get these two things early in the league? Definitely not. Even the people who are really good at PvM probably aren't gonna get these very quickly. So I don't know how much use you're really gonna get out of these. Maybe in the late game, if you wanna like farm a boss for a pet or something like that, this is gonna be really good. But early on, good luck, all right? Good luck. I do like the items, especially the bracers. I think they're really strong. That healing effect is gonna be super nice. But because it's behind such a hard boss, I can't give it S tier as much as I would love to. It's gonna be so hard. It's gonna be so difficult to pick it up, even if it is extremely good. I don't know, man. I think I'm planning on taking Barlowmore. I'm not even sure I'm gonna be able to get those, honestly. Like, just beating the Coliseum itself, I think will be a win. If I can beat the Echo version, I mean, great. But man, and because A is getting crowded, you know, shifting some things down. Sorry, Mauritania, back to B tier. Sorry, Asgarnia, C tier, until you get that special attack relic. As you know me, I like my tier list to be at least a little bit well balanced. But that is where all of the items land. I think this is going to be really contentious, so you'll have to let me know what you think. Am I undervaluing the desert? Am I undervaluing Mauritania? I don't know. Am I overvaluing these two? I don't think so, but yeah, let me know what you think. Now, some of you have been asking, how does this impact the overall area tier list? And this is the old tier list. Now, I've said this once and I'll say it again. It is not all about the gear in leagues. You are going to have a lot of skilling related tasks, and you definitely don't want to just hard focus into the gear, because then you might end up in a place where you struggle to get points elsewhere. So you do want to make sure that you've got good skill coverage. That said, gear is a huge part of leagues. You get so much power, so much fun out of just like going and killing bosses, obliterating random monsters around the map. So like, I get it. Gear is huge. So with that in mind, this is going to be the updated tier list. Current and Mauritania, I think they're still on top. Nothing that I saw here really changed that for me. We have a huge value surge in the Fremnik region. Oh my god, dude, the jewelry. The jewelry's so good. I am pretty sure that the Fremnik is going to be like the most picked region, or maybe like the second most behind Barlowmore. That jewelry is just too good. There's other activities in Fremnik that are helpful for skilling as well. And while before it was in C tier, I think the jewelry from the Echo bosses moves it up this much, just because those are slots that are really hard to fill. Typically, you want to have a supporting region anyway as you're going through the league. So like, Fremnik's looking pretty strong. Desert didn't really change for me, and maybe this is because we already knew what the Echo was going to be. I don't really feel like pushing this up into S tier or moving it down into B tier. I think it's fine right where it's at. Wilderness, again, I really love it as a support region, and you essentially just got the best melee weapon in the game from the empowered King Black Dragon. Like, I think a lot of people are going to want to take the Wilderness, and it has such good skill coverage for support. So like, not only are you getting a really, really powerful weapon and shield slot, you are also going to be able to train up so many of your skills. Now, I will say, since I think a lot of people are going to be taking the Wilderness, I think this also weakens the case for the Golden God Relic. If you take the Wilderness, you're already going to get so much money. You're going to have good options for training your prayer. So like, Golden God Relic, kind of looking a little sad, I think, after some of these. But for the rest of the tier list, I had to start moving things around because I wanted it to be a little bit more balanced. I think Taranwen's a lot better now. Being able to use the crystal armor with melee weapons definitely gives it some value. It's no longer in the D tier. Taranwen people, you did it. You won. You hodled your stocks. It's gone up, all right? Barlowmore, I would love to keep it in A tier. There's other Echo stuff that you're going to get access to, and I think it's going to be so hard to get access to the empowered version of Soul Heredit, and also to beat him. Like, and probably you're going to need to beat him multiple times to get the drops. Like, it seems rough, dude. And especially when you compare that with something like Mauritania, which also is going to fill up all of your slots anyway, and you're going to want to use that Barrows armor. It also weakens the case a little bit for the Moon's armor. I still think the Moon's armor is going to be really fun. I still think there's a lot of skilling options for Barlowmore, but it's just dropping down a little bit. And Asgarnia, it's kind of a similar deal. I don't think the Echo is that strong right now. It's still got okay skilling options. It still helps you fill out the rest of your gear, but I don't think it's quite as interesting. Now, if we get a special attack relic, that may change my opinion of it, but for now, low B tier. I pushed the starter areas down. They don't have an Echo drop. I don't think they necessarily like got worse. You still get them for free, but I had to put something above Kandarin. Kandarin, oh my god, dude. I think Kandarin just lost it, dude. Kandarin was already, like, bottom of my list. Kandarin is now in the bin. It's taken the place of Taronwyn. It's debatably the worst region. It still has some good use cases for magic. It still has some good use cases for, like, skilling options. Of course, you can pick up, like, the melee prayer. So it's not like you can't use Kandarin. It is still good as a support region. I just think it lost to Fremnik in the wilderness as support regions. And there's a lot other better synergies between, like, your main region picks that you're gonna do. But man, I don't know, dude. I don't think it's looking good for Kandarin. Oh my god, man, that was a lot for a daily leak. Holy cow. It's getting so late. If you're seeing this, I somehow managed to survive through the editing process into the night. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more of the daily leaks, see more leagues content. I've got my Discord linked down in the description if you want to join that. And I will be streaming the league at the start of it. It is going to start on the 27th at 6 in the morning Central Time. I'm going to be starting my stream at 9. So a couple hours after the start, if you want to jump in, join me as I'm playing through the league. Then maybe we can end up having some fun together, talking about different strategies and things. But with that, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.